So we're up to 17 people right now. I think we might as well just dive in and get started. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop screen share, bring us all back into gallery view, and then I'm going to turn things over to Jarrett Turner from the class of 2004, who's on Alumni Council, who's going to provide a few introductory remarks.
I think I can unmute myself. All right, great. Well, thanks everyone for taking the time today. Carolyn, thanks for setting this up. I guess, what can I say in terms of, my background? I graduated class of 2004. In terms of what I've done since, I was investment banking and then made my way from investment banking into private equity. And then over the years and learning the skill set that it took to be successful in that industry, I took sort of an entrepreneurial spirit I had from growing up, from family members or what have you in my DNA, or what I gained from Colgate and my experiences at Colgate, and decided to launch my own company in 2015. And so I currently run my own private equity firm in New York City. We employ a class of 2014 grads, so he's 10 years younger than me, gained a little bit different experience, but really he's worked with me for almost his entire working career. He started at 22 years old. He just turned 28 years old. So I said, I'm kind of dragging him through his 20s. And we've had a series of Colgate interns, as well as Colgate. The endowment is actually one of our investors. So I find, a special purpose for Colgate in any way I can. Carolyn, I don't know what else you'd like me to expand upon, but I can take this in any direction you want, or I could open it for questions. I always like to try to create these things as interactive as possible.
Sure. Perhaps maybe just a word about Alumni Council and what the experience is like for you serving on that.
Sure. So if you're not familiar with Alumni Council, we represent alumni from the school across a series of years or decades or eras, however way you want to think about it. But we're essentially people that have graduated from the school representing a larger body of people and their interests. And we're trying to act as leaders on their behalf and carry on messages to them to keep them interested in the school and make sure that their passions for the school stay alive and well. In terms of my experience, I've been on the Alumni Council for a few years now. It was a process where I and everyone else was voted in. So it's somewhat of a competitive process, but it's generally people that are very passionate about the school. So it's a lot of fun being with those folks that are still passionate years after they've graduated. I'm 39 years old. There's people that are younger than me. There's people that are in their 60s. So it's a lot of fun sharing experiences and stories from across the decades at Colgate. It's also given me an opportunity and others on the council to interact with President Casey really multiple times a year, which has really been incredible because we get direct access, and not just in a big auditorium, but where we can actually speak to him one-on-one or really raise our hand. And through coming back to campus, I'm also getting to tour my old stomping grounds, but I'm also going up to President Casey's house for meetings and having a lot of direct interaction, not only with him, but also his executive and administrative staff that help really run Colgate day to day. So that's been quite helpful. So I would say one of the benefits of being on the Alumni Council is you're in the know and you act as a little bit of as a delegate or diplomat, if you will, carrying that back to a constituency that you represent to an effect. And it's been a lot of fun.
And what I can say from a staff standpoint is having the Alumni Council is so valuable because it really provides us with the opportunity to connect with our alumni for so many ways, to gain industry insights from them for programs like this, to talk to them about the best ways to engage alumni, to discuss volunteer opportunities. So I've had the pleasure of working with the Alumni Council during my 4 years at Colgate, and it's really always just truly a wonderful experience. So with that, I'm going to just dive into things from here. Jarrett, thank you so much. Really appreciate you jumping on and providing that intro and speaking with everyone. If there is anyone on the call who has follow-up questions for Jarrett, either about Alumni Council or about his professional experience, please feel free, send him a message while we're on the Zoom, or reach out to me, and we can definitely put you in contact with him. And Jarrett, for your purposes, feel free to stay on the line for as much of this as you'd like. You're also more than welcome to drop off to other applications.
Excellent. Thanks, Carolyn.
Perfect. So let me jump back on screen share and really officially kick this series off. So this is three-part series is part of SophoMORE Connections. And the title is Entrepreneurial Journeys, Insights from Entrepreneurs and Starting Your Own. The goal of this series is to give you insights from entrepreneurs directly in their own words about their journeys, their career paths, and then also to start to think about what your own might look like. Before we dive into things, I want to talk a little bit about what I mean when I say entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship can mean very different things to different people. Here at Colgate, we take a very broad definition when it comes to entrepreneurship. We consider entrepreneurship to be business, can be in the nonprofit space. It could be a small business, a restaurant, a pop-up. It could even be a campus initiative. In Thought into Action, we use the term venture instead of startup or company or something that has a more narrow connotation. And I see some familiar faces on the call. For those of you who don't know me, I am the director of Thought into Action, which is all of our entrepreneurship programming on campus here. I do fall into broadly the career initiatives category, which is my connection into SophoMORE Connections. And I'm really excited because we have a number of programs here for students who are interested in diving into entrepreneurship, but we also have a number of opportunities just like this that provide more of an introduction overview that you then might ask yourself, okay, am I interested in diving into a year-long TIA program or something where you would get more hands-on experience? And so part of what will experience over these next three sessions is kind of a twofold structure. We'll spend the first 30 minutes of each session with a featured entrepreneur. Our speaker today is Fatima Anwar from the class of 2011. She's the CEO of Ethical and Sustainable Sourcing. We have two other really great speakers in the coming weeks, one of whom is a spouse of a Colgate alum and the other of whom is a recent graduate. These three entrepreneurs have just really amazing backgrounds that span a wide range of experiences and industries. You'll hear from each of them about their journeys and you'll have the chance to ask them questions. The second half of each of our sessions will be spent diving into your entrepreneurial skills and passions to consider what entrepreneurship might look like for you if it was something you were to pursue. So I won't spend any more time beyond that, kind of setting things up, because I really want to turn over to Fatima so that you can hear from her. I've heard Fatima speak before. She's so inspiring. She's a really interesting entrepreneurial journey, and she embodies so many of the entrepreneurial qualities that we highlight in TIA. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Fatima Anwar, class of 2011.
Thank you, Carolyn. First of all, can I just say I'm so excited to be here with all of you and to just have this conversation. And Jared, it's such a pleasure to meet you as well, albeit virtually. So I'll just start off with just a brief introduction of myself and my company and what we actually do. So I am the founder and CEO of Ethical and Sustainable Sourcing. What we do is we build out supply chains and we consult on supply chains. My primary line of business is in apparel. We connect apparel brands in North America with manufacturers overseas, primarily South Asia, and these manufacturers tend to be ethical, they tend to be sustainable, and they tend to be price competitive. The ethical part of the equation is really focusing on labor rights. We ensure that the manufacturers that we work with are providing safe working conditions, fair wages, other auxiliary benefits such as childcare, daycare, medical, having the right to unionize. And that becomes really important in my line of work because I work with mid to large size manufacturers and clients, and any of these single facilities can house anywhere from 1,000 to 8,000 to 15,000 workers. And it's really a micro community in itself. So the second portion of it is really the sustainability portion. Now, when we talk about sustainability, we're really seeing it in practice from the manufacturing side where majority of the pollutants are taking place. So we focus on conserving water, we focus on working with manufacturers to reduce their carbon footprint, and ultimately to just source in a mostly cleaner and greener way, because the truth of it is you can't be fully sustainable, but you can make major tweaks here and there and have a large impact in the process. So that's the company. When I founded this company, what I also realized is that there's so little real information out there on supply chains, on sourcing, on sustainability, that I launched my own podcast called Straight from the Source. And we speak with deep subject matter experts, and we really try and put real content out there for anyone, whether you are a student, you are an emergent leader, or you are a seasoned leader. And the goal is to really help you move towards becoming more sustainable. And I think it's just taken on a whole other level of importance in recent times. I think we don't have to look far. COVID is an example of when supply chains go wrong. And the animal products, for instance, in this particular case, was just not sourced very ethically, and we did not follow the rules that we should have. So with that said, I want to take you guys through a little bit of my own journey. And the hope of that is that perhaps it'll spark an idea, perhaps it'll spark an inspiration. And as Carolyn and Jared said, we're all here for you guys. Colgate is a small community, and we're very excited to come back and talk to sort of the next generation of graduates. So I want to break it out into 3 parts. And by the way, I welcome all questions. It will be great if we can hold it towards the end, but if you have a jumping question, a burning question, you just want to jump in, please feel free to do that. So I thought about this yesterday, how to really frame my story in a way that perhaps might be beneficial to you at your stage. And I tried to put myself in your shoes when I was a sophomore in college. So I'll break it up into 3 chapters: my time at Colgate, my time right after Colgate, my corporate career, and then when I started my business. So I'm originally from Bangladesh, and I joined Colgate in 2007. So the interesting thing is I came here and I absolutely fell in love with the college and the campus, and I got really involved. I was in student government, I was in debate, and I majored in international relations, minored in econ, and writing and rhetoric. Now, the interesting thing is when I was growing up in Bangladesh, we studied under the British system. It's your O levels and your A levels where you specialize. And I specialized in economics, accounting, and math and literature. And it's kind of a unique combo, but I always found quant stuff very easy. But I've always had a passion for communication. And the thing that I always enjoyed the most was really talking to people, storytelling, and connecting with others. So I allowed that interest to sort of dictate more of my curriculum choices and my extracurricular choices, as opposed to just going with something that I knew how to do. So if I had taken more econ classes, more math classes, there was a very defined career space for me. But at that time, I just did not feel a real pull. And I wanted to take advantage of an institution like Colgate. So I started taking all these IR classes. I started taking all these like poli-sci philosophy classes, and I was terrible at paper writing. So my very first paper that I wrote, I got a big old C, and the professor was like, "Hey, Fatima, why don't you just go to the writing center?" And I said, "Sure, professor, will do." So I come back with my next paper and I got a C minus. And he's like, "Fatima, what happened? I told you to go to the writing center." And I'm like, "Professor, I did." And so so that's just to show you that it wasn't the smoothest and easiest of transition to pick up a different skill set. But that is what I looked to college for, to really help me shore up my critical thinking skills and my writing skills. It took me till almost end of my junior year to really start doing very, very well. It definitely hurt my GPA, but to be honest with you, I left college fulfilling the goal that I had, which was to be very well-rounded in the communication space, to have really strong critical reasoning, thinking skills, and also to come out with really strong storytelling skills. Now, that's sort of the college chapter, right? And then that got me thinking, okay, so this is a skill set. The skill set was really defined by my interest. Now I have to find a way to turn that into a career. And some of the best, one of the best things that, and actually a Colgate alumni said to me, is really critically think about the choices that you make in your career, because you will spend more time at work than you will with your family, with your children, with your friends. It really will take up a big chunk of your life. So you might as well just do something that you like, right? So I thought, okay, that's a really great piece of advice. But I really wasn't sure yet exactly what my passions were. I was interested, and I'm just a very curious person by nature. So I was interested in so many different things. And I really was having a hard time connecting the dots between commerce, passion, and skill, right? Because it has to be a trifecta of those things for it to be effective. And ultimately, you want to make money doing what you're doing. So I looked into different fields, and I first settled on, advertising and strategy. It's a very competitive field, but it was incredible training. I worked for some of the largest brands in the world, some of the biggest, you will all know them. And the advantage of that is that it really taught me how to take those communication skills and apply it in the real world. I had a lot of practice in high school, in college, public speaking, presenting, writing, in what I would call low stakes environments. And that gave me really good training and a very competitive edge when I entered the job market, because I was already better, significantly better at certain things than, say, some of my other peers. And so it really helped me sort of pull it together and understand that in a business context, if I am proposing something, if I am coming up with a strategy, what is it that people really respond to, and how to really read a room and how to prepare for it. And through that, I learned that, one part of the equation is to talk about how it makes sense culturally, maybe what you're proposing is the right thing to do, but always have a business rationale for coming out of it. Perhaps it costs more, perhaps it's more efficient, perhaps if you market it better, you get a better ROI on your investment, on your positioning. So that was incredible experience, incredible learning. And it also helped me get very comfortable in my skin. Always, I feel like in many ways, I'm the first of something in many rooms. I'm an immigrant, I'm a woman, I'm Bengali, I'm Muslim, I'm this, I'm that. And so there's always been a little bit of that added pressure to represent. And that particular phase of my life was really fantastic in helping me transition, in helping me gain a lot of confidence in who I am and what I offer, because at that point I had really built up some real skills. So, okay, I now have experience. I now understand how to make money, perhaps doing what I do, but the passion points were not necessarily connecting with me. I am someone who comes from a very interesting mix in terms of background. One side of my family are entrepreneurs, they're business people. My grandfather actually founded one of the first manufacturing facilities in Bangladesh. That was a big business back then. But my father's side of the family are all very liberal, tree huggers, as far to the left as you can kind of get. And I grew up in a very interesting mix of social work and politics and entrepreneurship. So I always knew that I wanted to really make my career impactful. And I cared about a lot of different things, but I just didn't know where to really pour my energy into. So at that point, I just told myself, why don't you just take a step back and let your curiosity lead the way? And what I found is that there were a couple of things that I was really interested in, but they were very divergent and very different from each other. One of them was, before I founded this business, one of them was actually event planning, very different from everything I've ever done. But given my personality, and I have to say, I think I've been in over like 10 weddings and bridal parties, and you're just running around and you're helping them plan, and you just think, oh, you know what, this is something I could potentially be great at. And I tried it and I hated it. And I hated it because the people I was working with were not my best friends that I absolutely loved. I didn't like it because it wasn't scalable. And I also didn't necessarily like it because I didn't like the new business process. And sometimes I realized that there is no other way to figure it out except to try it and to take it really seriously. And everyone, honestly, especially in the kind of climate that we live in and the environment that we live in, is very forgiving of that. As long as they see that it's a really sincere effort and you're really trying to learn and discover. Because the best mentors that I've ever had, they've always told me when you are younger in your college years, in the early 5, 6 years of your life, in your early stages of your career, is about exploration. You are learning. No one is expecting you to become the CEO after 5 years. This is when you learn and you practice and you sort of start getting the kinks out and you really start figuring out who you are and what is really important to you. So, perchance, when I went back to Bangladesh, I met up with a friend of mine who was running his family's facility. And these businesses are sort of structured as like almost like legacy businesses. You know, your father, your grandfather starts it, and then the next generation takes over. Our family, my grandfather sold the factory when he was retiring. So I went back and I was amazed at the changes that had happened. And we started talking about labor rights and labor issues and sustainability. And this may be a little bit, this might be a little bit of an old news for some of you all, but there was an incident that happened in 2013. It's called the Rana Plaza incident, where there was a massive building collapse and around 11,000 people died. It was a manufacturing facility and they were doing many, many things wrong. And it was that particular moment that was such a cataclysmic moment and such a personal tragedy for all of us that it got the world to really start paying attention about labor rights and sustainability and where do your products come from, you know? So I found it very fascinating because these are the people who are really actually making your products, right? And so when I went to the facility, I was amazed at the size and scale at the new facilities. I was amazed at the level of technology and how much innovation there was on the floor. And also, I was really, really happy to see the level of progress that had been made in labor rights issues. Now we have some of the best line conditions, some of the best manufacturing facilities, and perhaps to our credit, one of the strongest labor unions anywhere in the world. And that gives our labor force a really powerful voice and a seat at the table. And when I went there, it was as if the last missing piece of what I was looking for immediately fell into place. And I almost felt almost like a lightning bolt. It was reverberating through me. And I just thought, oh, this is so interesting. I have to pursue it. I have to learn more. Maybe there's something that I can do in this space. But it was at that point so different from so far all of my corporate experiences, right? So I started really trying to understand the industry. I called as many people as I possibly could to ask them about their experiences in the manufacturing facility, whether it's managers of the facilities, owners of the facilities, folks that I knew in the United States who were in the fashion industry, anyone really who would give me a minute of their time. Now, before I did that, I also did a lot of research on my own, whether it's looking up online. I attended a lot of free seminars. I went to lots of free lectures, and just to understand where is the market? What are we trying to accomplish? What's sort of the temperature, right? What's the temperature here in the United States and the appetite for what we're doing in the United States? So it slowly started coming together, and I came up with a system for auditing the manufacturing facilities. I started with just one manufacturer, and I would, go to all these conferences just with my business card, and I didn't even have my website up and ready yet, and I just felt so new. I felt very, very brand new, guys. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And there were so many moments where I was like, oh my gosh, what am I even doing here? But I realized that no one would ever take me seriously if I didn't treat my business as if it was the most serious thing in the world. Because when you are starting and you are in your inception, you are the driver, you are the engine, you're the mechanism. So I took it very seriously, and over time I grew it. We now have a portfolio of close to 100 manufacturers that we've partnered with. I have a team in Bangladesh. We have clients across different categories here. And the thing that I love the most is the fact that it's real time impact. the work that we're doing, I can directly see how it's funding manufacturing facilities, especially during such a tough time through COVID. And we've actually managed to retain quite a bit of business. We lost some, especially, lots of different reasons, but really the simplest explanation is that in certain categories, folks are spending less. So therefore the orders are lower. But overall, we really maintained as much of the order quantities as possible, because what I am always cognizant of is that the people that it's helping the most are the workers in the manufacturing facilities, where 80% of them tend to be women, in a country like Bangladesh, which is only starting to become really educated, only starting to become middle income. And that growth is really driven by women. And when you educate a woman, when you help make her financially independent, she tends to go take care of her children, of her family, the elders, and really puts emphasis on education and healthcare. So those are things that I feel are really important. So it's really, really humbling and incredible experience to be part of that journey with them. And in a facility, if you have anywhere from 1,000 to 8,000 to even 15,000 workers, and you think of them, if it's 3,000 workers and you think of them as 3 per person, you're supporting almost 15,000 people on that salary, and you're supporting that community. So it is important that we do it, and we do it as sincerely and as well as possible. The other thing that I'm really proud of is the advocacy work that we do, and helping spread information about supply chains, about sustainability, encouraging younger folks to maybe think about something that they may not see or come across that often. But I do want to end by saying there's a couple of really valuable things that I have picked up along the way that has really helped me, because it takes a little bit of time and patience to connect the 3 dots when I started, right? It's the connection between the skill sets that you have / the skill sets that you can develop, between commerce and between your interests. It's that trifecta, it's that triangle. And it's a process of exploration, discovery, trial and error, failure and success. So it will take a little time to get there. As you are figuring out what your path is, there's a couple of things that you can do. First of all, I will really honestly say this. I really truly believe in letting your interests dictate some of the decisions that you make, especially now, and to sort of de-escalate the pressure and allow your interests to guide the things that you do, the skills that you develop. And it may be an inherent ability that you want to flesh out more. It may be something completely new, like the way I picked up. And ultimately, you will find a way to use it because you are more drawn to it. The second portion of it is to make really interesting friends. And the reason why I say this is I was given this piece of advice by this very successful entrepreneur in my early 20s, when I was sitting and asking myself a lot of these questions. How do I do this? Where do I go about figuring out? And I had this tendency, I was seeking out the most successful people in the field, the most successful alumni. And they're like, well, okay, figure out what you want to do, get back to me. And it wasn't as helpful for me. And it also was a little bit of a time suck for them. So instead, he said, why don't you focus right now on making interesting friends? Couple of years older than you, couple of years younger, really look at their life. And that has helped me tremendously in many ways, because the folks that I find interesting are folks that I also share different values with. Like they share my sense of curiosity. They're very driven people, and we sort of grew up together. So some of my girlfriends, for instance, now, especially from Colgate, they're doing incredible things in government and politics and business and fashion, and seeing them inspires me. And we would sit and we would maybe hash out presentations together. We would sit and we would really help each other. So that was a community that I had developed, really. And that's community that I still have to this day that I'm really proud of. Now, if there are things that you are already like, you know what, Fatima, I think I'm really into computer science. Like, I think coding is amazing. I want to have my own website. I want to have my own tech company. Then take a slightly different approach. In parallel, in parallel. And that approach, really do your research, go online. We live in an internet era. You have so much access to everything in this world. Learn a little bit, then start reaching out to some folks, right? You have an institution like Colgate backing you. This is really important for all of you all to understand. Colgate is such a prestigious institution in the East Coast area, really. When you are applying for jobs, when you go up and speak to people, the fact that you are a graduate from this university already gives you a certain level of cachet. And the alumni network is really well positioned. And in my experience, I found them to be very open and very eager to connect and be there and be supportive. So you can start off by reaching out to a few, people who are maybe just a couple of years older, hear their experience, have some questions answered. And then if you have some more burning questions, then slowly start reaching out to some higher people, understanding that there's a little more pressure and demand on their time, and maybe they'll be able to connect with you once every 6 months or a year. So use that well, be thoughtful about it, be considerate, and really think of their time as well, and maintain those relationships. Lastly, it is really okay to not know what you are doing. And it is really, really okay to figure it out as you go along. There is such a tolerance for that in America. There is such encouragement of entrepreneurs. And whether it is your journey to go immediately after college to start your own company, or if you say, you know what, I want a corporate career, then maybe I'll do something. There's elements of that everywhere. The people who succeed the most, even in corporate careers, are folks who are self-starters. They figure out how to do their role, and then they figure out how to take on more. And there is that notion of like leadership that emerges once you decide to be curious, to explore, to try things, and to fail a little bit. There's a huge amount of tolerance. Throughout all of it, just remember that, you know, everything that you are doing, and I wish I knew this a little bit, or understood this a little bit more when I was your age, is that there's no wrong time. It's never too early to really start figuring out what your personal brand is, what you value, and to seek out communities and to also be there for your community and reciprocate with generosity. If you find opportunities for others that you know that they would be really interested in, pass that along. And I promise you, it's going to come back tenfold. So all of that together has led me to this journey today, to this business today. And I am just excited to be back at Colgate and just talking to another group of bright young people. And I just want to open this up now. If any of you have any questions or comments, just please feel free to unmute and we'll just have a conversation.
Perfect. You all have the ability to unmute now. So we'll spend about 10 minutes or so, just an open Q&A. So please, so much great info from Fatima already and insights. Ask away in terms of questions.
Okay, no burning questions.
I have one.
Okay.
First,
great.
I just want to say thank you for taking the time to speak to us. It's awesome, and your story is great. Is there any like soul class that really inspired you at Colgate as an entrepreneur? If you had to like single it down to one single class.
Oh my God, there were so many, but I don't know if you have that class anymore. I'll tell you about it and I'll tell you what I liked about it. So it was, I believe the professor's name was Karen Keating, but I'm not sure if she's at Colgate anymore. It was a sort of leadership of psychology class. And she gave us this project and she just said, you know what? What if you could pick any project in the world? And what if you could come up with a solution to make it better? It could be a business problem, it could be a social problem, it could be anything. And I just, you know what, when I sat down, I started writing, I just had idea after idea after idea after idea. And I just thought, wow, you know what, this is a side of my personality, this is interesting. And it just helped spark something. And there were other things that they would do that I found really interesting. So she would put us in little groups and she would, she's a psychologist. So she would set up these like little tricks and exercises for us to do. And really, towards the end of the semester, she told us she's not really grading us on completing the assignment. She was just observing us on different leadership skills and ways we communicate, and then just trying to work with us to strengthen that. And that really resonated with me and made an impression, because there's a lot of thought leadership and opinion. And my story is just one story, right? And I can't be you, Ryan, and you can't be me, because to be each other, we have to have our DNA and our life experiences. Rather, what she was encouraging was you to be your best self, to be in control of who you are. You don't have to deliver things the way I do. You can deliver it exactly how you are, but you just maintain control and focus, and be assertive in ways that feels natural and comfortable. And that's why, I keep saying, whatever skill set and passion that you want to learn and develop, this is a good opportunity for doing it, because it's a little more low stakes environment. So that was a class that was hugely inspirational for me, because it got me to be very introspective and to start thinking about things that automatically popped to the top of my mind. And that class also helped me realize that I'm not necessarily someone who ever wants to be in the nonprofit space, but I did want to ensure that whatever I did in whatever capacity had, let's say, a net positive impact. And so for me, I think that's got to be one of my favorite classes. Great question, though. Yeah. Is there anyone else? All right, then if you guys also...
They don't get off that easily. We need at least 2 or 3 more questions. I mean, how often do you have access to someone like Fatima, who has, just such an interesting journey? She's worked for other organizations. She started her own thing. I have to imagine that there are some other insights. And if you're not asking questions, you're not taking advantage of the opportunity. So we need at least 2 or 3 more questions.
I have a question.
Hi there.
Oops, sorry. Also, thank you for coming and speaking to us. It's been incredible hearing about your story. But would you say that your idea to start your own company and the idea for your company came more as a result of your previous jobs, or as your background in Bangladesh?
I think that's a really great question. And I don't think it necessarily just happened because I happened to be from Bangladesh. It definitely helped solidify it for sure. But I think what really sparked it was the fact that I was at a point in my life where I already knew, I just had the entrepreneurial bug, right? I already knew that I was looking towards something that felt a little more impactful. And that did not necessarily, to me, immediately translate into, okay, you have to start a business. I was very open-minded. Maybe it's a slightly different type of job, maybe in a slightly different type of industry. And I was already at that point hearing a lot about sustainability. And personally, when I had heard about 2013, because it happened in Bangladesh, the Rana Plaza incident, I was very familiar with it, and I was hearing so much and listening to so much talk, but it didn't feel so real until I walked in there. I walked into the facilities and really saw with my own eyes, and that's what really kicked it off. But to be honest with you, it was an exercise of curiosity, allowing my curiosity to lead me to different places. Like, for instance, at this point in my life, I really understand sustainability. I really understand supply chains. Now, in like a funny sort of flip, I'm now very interested in the financial side, for instance, of supply chains and the impact of that, and how we can really incentivize more businesses to come on board, and what impact investment really looks like. And I think the main takeaway that I would say is that you will spend more time at work than you will anything else. It's just a fact. And I want to encourage you to work smart. I want to encourage you to take advantage of your resources and to let your passion and your curiosity drive it. Because there are lots of others, very few of us 100% reinvent the wheel. And if you find something that's interesting, that has a stickiness factor in your mind, then you will probably find somebody in your alumni network, somebody in your friends and family who has done it and can maybe help you and help you think about where you can take it. So the whole world is open, and just do things, just do things that you find interesting. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you so much. That
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
helps.
Great question. Yeah.
So I have a quick question. For those of us still trying to figure out like where our skills, passions, and like personal value kind of align, do you have any more tips about discovering career paths besides just trial and error?
Yeah, I have a couple of good ones. So you mentioned three things, right? Skills, and as you're developing your skills and as you're exploring your passions and understanding your values. I'll start with your value system. And mind you, values are a living, breathing, dynamic thing. They will always be sort of changing and evolving, and rightfully so. But, there are some core basics to it. And understanding your value system as a human being becomes really important, can really affect some of the career choices that you make. You may not be happy in certain industries that may feel too mercenary if you really lean the other way, or vice versa. So, one of the best ways to start understanding values is to start small. Look around. Who in your family is your favorite person? Who is your best friend? What are the traits that they share in common that you really like, that you gravitate towards, that make you trust them, like them, and want to work with them more? The intrinsic value of that, when you understand a little more of who you are in the world and the things that you value. When you walk into an organization, for instance, say you get a job and you're not starting your business right away, or whatever have you. You walk in, you say you're paired with a supervisor. Of course, you're going to get along great, but at the same time, look around your organization. Who else catches your eye? Who shares your value system? Maybe it's a supervisor on a different team who can perhaps help you get your next position in your next role. Maybe it's a different HR person and you have that personal connection. So it's really working hard and working smart, and at the same time, building out a community that you genuinely feel good about. So that's where the value systems come in. And the skills is an interesting one. The skills is, I'll maybe ask you to reflect back on it. There's a mind mapping exercise that I like to do sometimes, and I'll ask myself a question in the center of the page, like, say, what skills do I want to develop and why? Why do I want to develop this skill, or what skills? And draw a circle around it and just like write down all your thoughts as they come up. There's no need to organize it, you'll organize it later. And just take a step back and see, are you really, or maybe things that you're interested in, and you'll see a pattern emerge. Maybe you're really leaning towards, like, I really want to develop some math skills, some quant skills, because I find the stock market really interesting, and that's just something that speaks to me, but I just don't know anything about it. I am really into gaming and VR and stuff, and there's portions of that that's really interesting. Okay, great. Now you have a path. Now start maybe reading about the industry, what jobs are like, what salaries are like, what sort of skill sets are people looking for. Go on Indeed, go on LinkedIn, see when they're posting job applications, what they're really asking for, and I promise you it'll put you miles ahead. And there's so many resources and things out there that you can learn right now that either Koge will give you, or even a lot of institutions will give you access to their software and tools for free as your students. So this is an amazing time to just explore the categories that you're interested in, and then look up what sort of skill sets are necessary to work in maybe some of the industries that you are interested in. Was that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, great.
And I'm going to jump in here because I think next question is actually a really perfect segue to where we're going next. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a big thank you to Fatima for taking the time to speak with all of us, to share her insights. I have a feeling that there were other questions in the crowd. So I will follow up with Fatima's contact information. I encourage you all to reach out to her with your follow-up questions. Take advantage of this opportunity. You have someone who's offered to give you her insights. And so just on behalf of all of us, thank you so much.
Thank you, Carolyn. And it's such a pleasure. And honestly, you all, I really enjoyed it. Best of luck. Not that you even need it.
Fantastic. So this is a perfect segue because I really want to spend our final 15 minutes starting to think about what might entrepreneurship look like for each of you. As we're hearing from these wonderful seasoned alums, I think that one of the questions that comes to mind is, okay, well, I'm a sophomore. How do I translate this for me? And so part of the goal of this series is to help you think about what might entrepreneurship look like for you. So I want to start out by just doing a quick poll of the group to find out what really brought you to this series in particular out of all the Sophomore Connections ones. So that should be popping up on screen. If you could just take just a second, just like to get a sense of what's brought everyone to this series. Fantastic. So it looks like we've got a lot of people who might be interested in both being an entrepreneur themselves as well as working at a startup or another growth stage venture. And we have a few people who know that they definitely want to start their own thing. I think for me, one of the things that's so interesting about entrepreneurship is that pretty much every entrepreneur you speak to will have at some point not only worked for themselves, but also spent time working for other people. And the entrepreneurial journey can look so different for everyone. As you heard from Fatima, she spent time in industry working for larger organizations. And that really gave her the knowledge and the experience and many of the skills that she needed to then go on and start her own thing. So that's so common. On the other hand, we have students who are here at Colgate, some of whom are on this call, who are already starting their own ventures. They may continue those after college, or they may go work for someone else and then revisit entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship truly can be a varied journey. While our speakers today will mostly, this month will mostly be talking about their experience as entrepreneurs, I can also say that working at a growth stage company is incredibly, it's just invigorating, and it will often give you a really great skill set that you can then take to actually starting your own venture. So I'm going to pop back on screen share for just a minute here and kind of take you through a framework that I want us to think about for how we might start to think about your unique entrepreneurial journeys. So as I said at the beginning, entrepreneurship is an incredibly broad term. As an entrepreneur, you could do so many different things. You could establish and manage a local cafe or brewery. You could create a clothing company that manufactures stylish swimwear out of recycled plastic bottles. You could create a social media marketing agency that works with small businesses. Or you could even establish a nonprofit supporting children on Native American reservations. All of these logos on screen here are real ventures that have come out of our Thought into Action program. And one thing that I want to highlight is that they're all very different. And that's because they were shaped by the passions and the interests and the skills of the entrepreneurs who started them. And so much of what Fatima talked about, and Nick's last question about understanding your interests, your skills, and your passions, I think is so relevant, because as a working professional, whether you're starting your own venture or you're working for someone else, what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what you're good at, that's going to shape the type of work that you want to do and the roles that you enjoy, and the organizations where you feel fulfilled, regardless of whether it's your own organization or someone else's. And so a framework that I really want us to think about is TIPS: talents, interests, passion, and skills. And this is a part where I recommend that you have a pen and paper because we're going to spend just to do a little bit of individual reflections and some rapid fire discussion. So the first of these areas is talents. The way that I'm going to define talents are things that are complicated tasks, but when you do them, it looks so easy. So for instance, this might be a chef who can create a gorgeous cake that just looks effortless. It could be a rock climber who can go up and down a rock face quickly, seemingly without breaking a sweat. Talents I think of as those things that just look so easy and effortless. So having given you that definition, I want you to take 2 minutes and spend some time writing down and reflecting. What are some of your talents? What are those things that come so naturally to you that your friends would just, be so impressed that they can't do those themselves? I'm going to set a timer and give you just a little bit of time to reflect on that. Okay, maybe another 20 seconds or so. And this does not have to be an exhaustive list. We're kind of doing this really rapid fire. Fantastic. So as you finish your last thoughts on paper, I really want to just get some rapid fire feedback here. I'd ask all of you to pull up the chat. You should all be able to send a message to everyone. You could just type in really quickly some of the things that you wrote down about what your unique talents are. Would love to just do some group sharing and acknowledge all of the unique competencies of everyone who's on this call. I hope you all were able to come up with some talents. I was going to do a word cloud, but this isn't going to look quite as good. Okay, fantastic. First response. All right, other people. What talents did you come up with? Awesome. And yeah, I think one of the things that we'll see from this is that everyone's talents are going to just be incredibly varied. And this really goes back to what Fatima was saying about understanding who you are as a unique individual, and really stepping into that and living that. Awesome. Fantastic. Really great. Some of these are so insightful too. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. So the next thing in the list is interests. And this was something that came up in Fatima's comments as well. Now I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to write down as many of your interests as you can. When you have free time, what do you like to think about? What do you daydream about? What do you, when you're in the car or when you're just staring out the window? Is it your workout for the day? Is it the sky and the universe? If you were to pick up a book or go to Wikipedia, what would you read about? What are your interests? So again, I'll give us about 2 minutes here on the clock. All right, about 20 more seconds. All right, so as you wrap up your final thoughts on paper, again, we'll just do some rapid fire sharing in the chat. Would love to know, what were those interests that you wrote down? What are those things that just capture your attention that you find yourself thinking about in your spare time, or just, you know, having relentless interest in? Awesome. Fantastic. Everyone's got really, yep, seeing your unique interests. Absolutely. It's awesome. Fantastic. Thank you all so much for sharing. You know, and interests actually feeds into the next one. And this is something Fatima talked a lot about, which is passion. I think passions and interests are very similar. Passion in some ways is really just that thing that makes you burn inside. And so for Fatima's case, you could tell that was that moment when she heard about this tragedy and she reflected on it and all the things that could be done. It just made her want to make a difference and want to dive into things. So for you, it may be a certain experience or a moment in time. It might be one of your interests or one of your activities. For instance, playing an instrument or playing sports, you may feel fully immersed and just so, you know, you lose track of time. So passions, I think, are related to interests, but a little bit different. I'll give us about, say, 90 seconds for this one. All right, maybe 15 more seconds. And whenever you wrap up, if you want to just pop those in the chat once more, we just got this one and then one more, and then kind of wrap things up. So I'd love to hear, what are your passions? What are those things you're most passionate about? Awesome. Yeah, this is great. I think one of the things in an activity like this allows us to do is really reflect and understand on who we are as unique individuals. So the last one of these 4 components are skills. And skills, I want you to think of these as activities that you could have someone pay you for. So we have natural talents. What might those skills be? Whether they come naturally as gifts or whether you've learned them over time. And this could be math, it could be writing. Maybe you're very organized or detail oriented. Maybe you're very people focused and empathetic. What are those skills that you have that you could somehow monetize or turn into your work? So again, we'll just give us one more minute and then I will promise I will wrap up quickly after that since we are right at time. As you finish, yeah, I'll give you one more minute and then I'll give us a time check. Perfect. So maybe 15 more seconds. And once you've come up with a good amount, if you just want to share a few of those in the chat, we'll have our last round of rapid fire sharing, and then I will kind of take you into what the next step of these reflections might be. Awesome. Yeah, really good things. Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for sharing. I hope that this has been a really helpful, even though it has been very rapid fire. I think that a lot of times we already have a really innate sense of what we're interested in, what we're passionate about, where our skill set lies. If you're interested in taking this to the next level, an activity that I would recommend doing on your own time would be reflecting upon all of these 4 things and thinking about what might you do if you were to combine all 4 of these areas. So if you were to think about taking your talents, your passions, your interests, and your skills, how might you turn that into some sort of entrepreneurial product or service? And obviously, it's not possible to create one that probably fits all of them, but you'll probably come up with a wide range of ideas. And so this can be a really great creative exercise just to get to really have fun and think outside the box. Perhaps you think about, oh, I would do a pet sitting agency, or maybe you would code an app, and then you can kind of weigh those and think about those and start to explore those either on your own, talking about them with other people. It's really a great way to think about what might entrepreneurship look like for you. And the reality is that you can also think about how this might apply outside of entrepreneurship. Because as I said, whether you're working for yourself or you're working for another organization, these are the types of things that are going to make you satisfied. So perhaps through an exercise like this, you would realize, wow, I really want to work in the health and wellness industry because I want to make a difference there, or I want to work with young children, or that you just might know that you really want to be hands-on creating something and actually being responsible for the creation of a new product. So I'll leave you with this. I hope that this has been a good first session for you. I tried to hit on our goals of both having it as an opportunity for you to hear from some entrepreneurs, but also start to think about what your journey might look like. I'll see you next Tuesday. We'll be on at 4 o'clock. We have another really great entrepreneur who's going to be joining us. In the meantime, if you have any questions at all, if there's anything you want to dive deeper with, or if you have follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And again, a big thank you to Fatima for so generously sharing her time with us today.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.